Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
She was very nice, talking to the kids.
A mother and two sons identified as the people found dead in this car. Homicide investigators focusing on their Surrey home. Also,
westbound to Joyce and downtown on this side, please.
A death at a SkyTrain station causes massive delays for morning commuters. And
no serious climate scientist thinks that this is just a random thing.
Bracing for another wildfire season. How the smoke could mess with your summer plans.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. Homicide investigators have now identified the people killed in yesterday's car crash in Surrey as a mother and two sons. CBC's Tina Lovegreen is live in Surrey tonight. And Tina, what have we learned about this family?
Neighbors say the victim, the mother and the two sons lived in this house on West Rosemary Heights. Police have now confirmed that this residence is linked to yesterday's crash, but they're releasing very little information on what kind of evidence they're searching for here. Those who knew the victims mourned their deaths and put flowers in front of this house on 35th Avenue near 149 A Street, which has been behind yellow tape since yesterday. Forensic investigators spent the day combing through the area, searching for evidence. The house is just blocks away from yesterday's crash site, where a mother and her two sons were found dead.
When officers attended the scene, when they served the overall scene, so inside the vehicle and outside the vehicle, they determined that something wasn't right, that the circumstances around the deaths of the occupants were suspicious.
Police won't say how the three people died, but we now know they lived in the house. Property records show the home is owned by Anna Chow. Neighbors describe her as a nice woman who liked to garden.
A very quiet family. I just saw them doing the garden work and working with the little dogs, and she was very nice.
CBC News has also learned that her two sons were in the car, 22-year-old Davy Howe and Mike Howe. Neighbors say police visited the area over the weekend. Peter Dawson, who lives nearby, didn't want his face shown on TV, but described the comings and goings of officers.
And then I just heard from a neighbor that they were here on Saturday with a nurse in the house for several hours.
Friends of Davy Howe say that he had become increasingly erratic and seemed to be suffering from mental illness. His Instagram account includes a series of posts made over the past month where Howe claims he's being impersonated online and his identity has been stolen. But investigators are providing little information and are asking anyone with information or dashcam footage to get in touch with them. Police say there is no further risk to the public, but Mike, so many questions still remain on what exactly happened here.
All right, Tina, thanks very much. Tina Lovegreen live tonight in Surrey. Well, big delays for SkyTrain commuters this morning. As the CBC's Mickey Cowan reports, a station along the line had to be closed for tragic reasons.
Eastbound to Patterson on this side, westbound to Joyce and downtown on this side.
It was a hectic morning for SkyTrain commuters. A bus bridge set up between stations.
I came here 9:30 with my granddaughter and we stuck for 2 hours.
I have half an hour to be at Lougheed. It happens, what can you do?
A medical emergency at Joyce Collingwood. That station closed for hours, also impacting those who work nearby.
I went outside and I saw that there's a lot of, fire trucks.
Patients at his medical center running very late.
3 hours, they're going to be out of time. So for our nursing staff and our doctors, it's going to create a backlog for the day.
But the reason for the closure, a sad one. Transit police say someone died. Some witnesses reporting they fell off the platform. The weight of that not lost on some.
Yes, I almost cry. I feel right now I won't cry.
Transit police say they don't yet know how the person died, whether it was intentional or accidental. But the incident is under review by police and the coroner. Whatever the case, it's a good reminder for some just how important safety is.
And I always say, please don't rush for bus, for SkyTrain. It's okay if you late for 5 minutes, but you're still in life.
All right, everybody, Joyce Station's open.
As for the SkyTrain, back to regular service early in the afternoon, with commuters going about their day, perhaps a little late, but otherwise business as usual. Mickey Cowan, CBC News, Vancouver.
Passengers stuck on the BC ferry that crashed yesterday into the Langdale dock are voicing their frustration tonight, both with the 10 hours it took to get everyone off the boat and in how BC Ferries informed passengers of what was happening. One passenger CBC spoke to said there was a complete lack of communication and leadership during the incident, and after the announcement the ship had crashed, updates were few and far between. BC Ferries had more to say today about the delay.
We had some of our marine superintendents, some of our engineering staff who needed to come on the vessel and whatnot to evaluate the situation and help out. We had some of those people coming on. So, yeah, they would have come off as well. But, you know, we had 285 people on board. We're not going to evacuate everybody. Much safer to keep people on board. We were offering, you know, coffee, tea, food, any meals that people wanted. But we know it was obviously frustrating for customers. Nobody intended to be on a ship that long.
BC's transportation minister says the crash is under investigation. Well, a probe has wrapped up into a fatal grizzly bear attack that left a mother and her infant daughter dead last year. Investigators in Yukon say for several reasons the attack was extremely unusual. And as the CBC's Philippe Morin tells us, they hope the end of the investigation brings a degree of peace to those still grieving.
Yukon's chief coroner today confirmed the story, which had been told by the father, Germund Rocholt. He killed the bear that attacked and killed his wife, Valérie Théoret, and their 10-month-old daughter, Adele.
We're brought together today as a family suffers the unimaginable grief of the loss of a young mother and her infant daughter.
The coroner said the attack was unpredictable, very sudden, and completely random.
There was nothing that we could see that could have been done differently.
Yukon's director of conservation services said the family had been doing everything right on the trapline.
Our investigation showed that this family was an experienced pair of backcountry users who maintained a clean camp, managed their attractants, and took precautions to prevent unnecessary wildlife conflicts. All available evidence suggests there was nothing Valerie could have done to stop this predatory attack.
Today's report includes new information about the bear. It is said to have been starving and in pain when it attacked. It charged the mother and daughter as they were walking outside.
It was emaciated, still out seeking food sources and not hibernating.
The chief coroner's report calls for more education on bear safety, but it notes the family had done everything recommended. Environment Yukon says some education will focus on an unusual aspect of this case. The attack happened in November, when grizzlies are usually hibernating.
We will also now include more awareness around that bear encounters could happen all year round.
This will likely be the last word we hear from Environment Yukon and the chief coroner about this attack. The family of the victims have also requested privacy.
It's just really important now that we respect their process now. And they have, like I said, they did offer support for the information that's being shared today, but they do need their privacy, they need their time to grieve. They've got a long road ahead.
Philippe Morin, CBC News, Whitehorse.
A BC family is demanding answers tonight after a planned trip from Kelowna to Fort St. John left their 15-year-old daughter stranded overnight at Calgary International Airport. Emma Fenton's family says after a delay on her first of two flights, Air Canada offered her a WestJet reroute to Calgary, then on to Fort St. John. WestJet ticket agents told her she'd get her connecting ticket in Calgary, but when she arrived, she was told to leave the airport's secured area, and no staff were at the airport's counters to help her. Fenton spent the night on the airport floor and flew out the next morning, but only as far as Grand Prairie, Alberta, where her mother drove 2 hours to pick her up. WestJet has apologized for the incident, while Air Canada says Fenton should have had time to sort out any ticket issues in Calgary. The provincial government is looking to the federal government to reinforce its resources on fighting money laundering. BC's Attorney General met the Federal Minister of Organized Crime Reduction in Victoria today. David Eby says he's lobbying for BC to be the focus of anti-money laundering initiatives announced in the federal budget.
Whether it's in relation to the proposed criminal code amendment, amendments related to FinTrack, the anti-money laundering agency, for which they have authority to broaden the mandate, trade-based money laundering, which is a serious issue as well.
And so I want to assure British Columbians that we are listening, that we're working well together. I believe that they will see measures, investments, and legislation in this new budget which really do advance the work that we do together.
The province is waiting on 2 reports, one of them due this weekend, before deciding whether to launch a public inquiry. BC is counting on Ottawa's support if that happens. Also at the legislature today, the family of murdered teen Kimberly Proctor supported the BC Liberals' attempt to reintroduce the Safe Care Act.
There would be a possibility that Kimmy would be alive today if a Safe Care Act was in place. Cruz Wellwood and Cameron Moffat both spiraled out of control while their community, school, their peers watched. Nothing was done, and we are forever asked, why was nothing done about these 2 boys?
Her 18-year-old niece was raped and murdered back in 2010 in the Victoria area. 2 teen boys were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Both showed clear warning signs of violent behavior leading up to her death. The Safe Care Act is a private member's bill the Liberals have now tried to introduce for a 3rd time. The legislation would require mandatory treatment and counseling for any youth considered to be at risk of committing violent crimes. Well, Richmond is asking for the public's help identifying a suspect in a Craigslist sale robbery. Suspect allegedly robbed the seller of a luxury watch at gunpoint. He's described as a white male with a medium build, wearing a camouflage hoodie, brown or gray jeans, and a baseball cap. He has a full-sleeve tattoo on his right arm. Anybody with information is asked to call Richmond RCMP. Well, the city of North Vancouver is set to begin charging for energy at its electric vehicle plug-in stations starting April 2nd. It's just the latest charging station provider to begin the move away from free energy. EV drivers face an increasing number of new costs as Burnaby considers a similar change to North Van. And a rule that had prohibited businesses from demanding fees at their charging stations has also been lifted. A new interactive map marks the locations where unidentified remains have been discovered. The BC's Coroner Service is hoping to generate more tips that could help determine who the remains belong to and how the people died. Blue points are for men, red for women, and green means the gender is undetermined. Clicking on a point gives the reader everything known about the case. For example, in Souk, where a severed foot was found in 2016, a picture of the shoe, possible age, and the victim and the size and model of the shoe are all listed. You can visit our website, cbc.ca/BC, for a link to the map and more information on how to use it. Spring has only just started, but BC residents are being told to expect another hot and smoky summer. Wildfire season is just around the corner, and as our Jesse Johnson explains, now's the perfect time to prepare.
If you live in BC, you can't predict the weather, but it's a pretty safe bet that at some point during wildfire season, you're going to run into some poor air quality. So if you have tickets to, say, an outdoor concert, you might want to come up with a backup plan.
No serious climate scientist thinks that this is just a random thing. The chance of a fire season, at least for some period of the summer, is high. And it's almost that if you don't get a fire that significantly affects Metro Vancouver this summer, we'd be a little bit surprised and feel lucky.
When air quality gets bad, studies show that masks can make a big difference.
Mask use on the higher pollution days is actually something that's reasonable to do, especially for people that are outside and exercising. The evidence is better, and it's worth considering.
Not all masks are created equal. Some offer more protection than others. Experts recommend getting one with the N95 logo on it. Most wildfires, nearly 60%, are caused by lightning strikes, but an awful lot are caused by people. Belcarra's Mayor Neil Belenky knows that better than most. He spent 10 years as a volunteer firefighter. He's sick and tired of people acting carelessly.
Young males seem to make the worst decisions when it comes to fire responsibility, and so we find that we deal with a lot of different fires as a result of all the publicly accessible areas.
Every year we hear warnings about throwing your cigarettes, and every year people do it anyway. If you live in the interior, the Okanagan, or another hot and dry part of the province, the fire risk is obvious. But there's a real risk here in Metro Vancouver, too. And that's why you want to take all the precautions you can to make sure your home is safe.
There needs to be a way from the fire to transfer from the underbrush and the trees to burn a structure. And if you want to reduce that risk, getting the trees, the overhanging trees that are going to drop the burning embers, and the bushes that are up against the side of the house, clear that area around the house.
Every year, the BC government sets a wildfire budget, and just about every year, the BC government blows right through that budget. Take 2017. $63 million was set aside for fighting wildfires, and the province wound up spending nearly 10 times that much.
We have contingency funds each year set aside in case of extreme conditions and natural disasters. I just want to reassure the people of BC that the funding will be there for public safety.
BC's annual wildfire budget has now been increased dramatically, but the province says no matter what that final number is, they'll spend whatever it takes to keep people safe. Jesse Johnston, CBC News.
And Nick Snurkovich is here now with our first look at the forecast. No smoke in these parts today for certain, Nick. Just clear blue, sunny skies.
Yeah, beautiful day, Mike. Temperatures hitting about 12 degrees. A little windy in some parts along the coast, but otherwise it's just been a beautiful day. Now, we are looking at a little bit of cloud cover just poking in to the Vancouver area right now. It's part of a system that's spinning off the coast there, Washington. Basically, it's just going to bring with it a few scattered showers through the morning hours. But other than that, we're back into the sunshine for the long-range forecast. There's a look at the system. Doesn't really move much. Best chance for seeing a few scattered showers is going to be through the morning hours tomorrow or the late overnight period tonight. By the time we hit the afternoon, it looks like for the most part, this stuff starts to clear out, and then we're back into the sunshine once again as we head through Thursday and into Friday. Overnight forecast, then increasing cloud cover. We're already seeing that start right now, down to 5 degrees, winds about 20 kilometers per hour. Tomorrow morning, about a 30% chance we're going to see showers in the Vancouver area. Some areas have a higher chance of that, and I'll talk more about that coming up in just a bit. Through the afternoon, we'll see some sunny breaks, highs up to 14 degrees, and that sunshine once again continues. Your full weather forecast is coming up in just a bit.
All right, see you in a bit. Thanks, Nick.
Bye.
The district of Sechelt had more politicians get voted out of office last October in the election than any other municipality in the province. And there's a very specific reason. As our Justin McElroy explains tonight, it all has to do with water.
In most of British Columbia, the big local issue is housing or accountability. Not so on the Sunshine Coast. This week we're heading to Sechelt, where a new mayor is hoping to tackle an age-old summertime problem. All of British Columbia has been dealing with hotter summers and lower snowpacks in recent years. But on the Sunshine Coast, they tend to go to stage 4 restrictions faster than anywhere else. It's not a supply problem, it's a storage one.
About 85% of the Sunshine Coast relies on the Chapman system for water.
With just one main storage facility, it's not uncommon for it to dry up by the end of summer, causing weeks where all outdoor tap water use is banned.
People don't like having to restrict their water. They want to continue to keep everything green, keep their vegetable gardens going, etc. So it's been more on people's minds over the last few years.
For years, all politicians have agreed the status quo isn't working and that the one place that's treating water right now isn't enough for the Sunshine Coast. The problem is politicians have bickered over what the right solution should be.
In the past on the Sunshine Coast, I'll put it out there, there's been some regional, I'm going to call it infighting, but it's really disagreements on what should move forward. So there hasn't been a real collaborative effort.
The mayor and 4 councillors lost their re-election bids in Sechelt, the most in BC, and every regional director either lost or retired. The new group is studying 4 long-term options.
We've got a really good regional board. We're working collaboratively up and down the coast. And we all recognize that these solutions have to be moving forward.
But Barry Janik, who led the neighboring community of Gibsons for 12 years, has a warning for any over-optimistic politician.
You can't just snap your fingers and click your heels together and water comes out of the sky and fills your reservoirs and your wells. It doesn't work like that.
He says the biggest problem will be what has scuttled water-related proposals in the past, voters not wanting to pay more money.
You need community buy-in because what we're looking at is an expensive undertaking. To provide water for the future of the Sunshine Coast is going to cost more money.
What comes next? Well, that study has to come back to the regional district and they have to decide on one of the 4 options. After that, it comes down to funding, more lobbying, and then building. It might seem like a long time, but in this part of the province, people are used to expecting delays. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Sunshine Coast.
Well, you're going to need a reservation now if you want to camp at the provincial park that's turned into an Instagram sensation. Joffre Lakes Park, just east of Pemberton, quickly became something of a social media darling in recent years, drawing massive crowds to its glacier-fed turquoise waters and often leaving park staff scrambling to manage the overcrowding. 26 coveted tent spots will be available through Discover Camping beginning April 2nd. The Ministry of Environment says campers without a reservation will be turned away. And just a reminder, you can also watch CBC Vancouver News at 6 on our website, cbc.ca/BC. And if you're watching us right now on Facebook or YouTube, we're also live during the upcoming commercial break. Now, weeks after a mass shooting made the rounds on social media, Facebook has announced plans to stamp out white supremacy on its platform. But will it work? We'll look at the pros and cons right after the break. Well, thanks for watching on Facebook and YouTube tonight. And just because she's gone for a little while on mat leave doesn't mean we're done with Wagstaffe Wednesdays just yet. Tonight, Johanna looks at the impact of solar cycles on the impact of jellyfish populations.
Jellyfish blooms seem to be taking over the headlines, from dangerous blooms on beaches to rising numbers clogging intake valves and taking over fishing nets. But are jellyfish taking over the oceans? Well, for years, scientists have noticed an increase in the frequency of these jellyfish blooms in oceans all around the world. And with obvious ties to warming oceans and overfishing, the trend looks likely to continue. Warmer waters rev up the metabolism of jellyfish, so they grow faster, they eat more, and then in turn they reproduce more and faster and live longer. But new researchers adding another layer to the jellyfish rise, the solar cycle. This new researcher is connecting jellyfish numbers to the 22-year cycle of solar sunspot activity. I spoke to Eugenie Jacobson, an oceanography student at UBC, about this connection.
So the more heat that you have reaching the planet, the more solar activity that you have drives these wind patterns. And so the stronger the winds, the more that you see these upwelling currents. So upwelling, there's certain places around the world, like there's Peru, where you have upwelling currents, where you have really high productivity. You often see lots of herring and things like that there. And essentially, as the wind flows over the ocean, it sort of drives up this upwelling of nutrients, and that really creates areas where you have high productivity, high nutrients, and the jellyfish can thrive.
She went on to say that the sun cycle process is an added layer rather than the sole cause, and that warming oceans and overfishing of jellyfish predators are still very much part of the bigger picture.
The physical properties of the ocean do change when the temperature increases, so that oxygen can't be withheld within the water. So that's one way in which that you can see sort of paves the way for jellyfish to kind of take over, because they do so well in low oxygenated water, whereas other things like fish and crustaceans and all those guys, they can't thrive as well.
So this doesn't necessarily mean we will see a massive drop in population in the next decade, and more researchers definitely needed to make that connection between jellyfish population and solar cycles. But with jellyfish such a major part of our ocean ecosystem, we need all the data you can get.
All right, thanks, Joe. And for more on what's making headlines in the world of science, you can follow Johanna on Twitter @JWagstaffe. In the meantime, we'll be back with the latest international headlines in just a couple of seconds. It has been 12 days now since a gunman stormed a New Zealand mosque and opened fire, all of it live streamed on Facebook. The video spread so fast and so far, some users simply couldn't avoid it in their feeds. The company has come under considerable scrutiny and today announced it's taking action. The CBC's Johanna Wagstaffe tells us why.
It comes down to shades of hate and acting on them. Facebook had already banned white supremacist content. Now it's blocking expressions like these of white nationalism or separatism. In the blog post, Facebook says it now realizes there is often no distinction. White nationalism and separatism, it says, cannot be meaningfully separated from white supremacy and organized hate groups. Facebook has been wrestling with policing white extremist content since the deadly neo-Nazi rally in Charlottesville in 2017. So-called white nationalists use the world's largest social media platform as an organizing tool. And the company came under fire for its role in the Christchurch mosque attack. The gunman went live on Facebook for several minutes.
I'm thrilled with the new policy.
Anti-hate activists applaud Facebook's move.
Platforms like Facebook and others actually do give oxygen to groups because what they do is they allow them to spread their message. Once that is taken away, that oxygen is sucked back into the atmosphere. They no longer have that oxygen necessary to continue.
Facebook's new ban goes into effect next week and will likely impact plenty of Canadian content too.
Hey everyone, this is a message for Facebook and Instagram.
From openly nationalist personalities and movements that encompass the alt-right. Facebook has already placed restrictions on Ty Hunt's pages, but he says he's not deterred.
I'm not the only one out there. There's other pages that the media is going to shut down too, but that doesn't mean that they're going to stop. Like, people are buying websites. There's other ways to get out there, right?
Experts agree banned content will move to other, albeit smaller platforms. That will make it harder to track, but maybe easier to stop. Those searching for it will now be directed to the Life After Hate organization, a support group for former white extremists. Tony McAleer is with the group and expects to be busy.
People are in these early curious stages and wanting to connect with sort of the deeper, darker side of this material. We hope to give them an opportunity to have someone to talk to.
And while hateful content, he says, will still operate in the shadows, the hope is today's move means it will fade there too. Johanna Wagstaffe, CBC News, Toronto.
As health officials have scrambled to contain a measles outbreak here in Vancouver, the disease has also been spreading in other regions across the continent. Rockland County, New York, is dealing with more than 150 cases. We sent our Stephen D'Souza to see how officials there are tackling the challenge.
The blood work, yes. It's right here.
When the state of emergency was declared north of New York City, Renee Kahan knew she had to do her part.
I felt this was my responsibility. You know, as a citizen living here with this outbreak, I wasn't taking any chances.
Officials say the dramatic step, banning anyone under 18 who is unvaccinated from public places like shops, schools, and restaurants, came after repeated efforts to reach those people met resistance.
We have sent people out from our department into the community to go right to the people's houses, and they've those that do not cooperate, they have slammed the door, they've opened it and said, don't come back.
The focus has fallen on the area's large Orthodox Jewish community. Officials aren't giving an exact figure, but the vast majority of measles cases are here.
Officials say the outbreak began in October when an unvaccinated resident visited Israel and contracted the measles. The resident then returned home with the disease.
Around that time, 6 other unvaccinated people also visited Israel. All came back with measles. There are now 155 cases in this county alone. Adding to the challenge of reaching this community, official-looking magazines like this, spreading anti-vaccine messages and sowing distrust of the health system and government. This local Jewish leader says rabbis have been trying to counter the anti-vax messages coming through social media and elsewhere.
There is an affirmative commandment to go get themselves vaccinated. You're not allowed to take unreasonable risks with your health, and not getting vaccination is an unreasonable risk.
Officials say the goal of the emergency declaration isn't to arrest people in the streets, it's to send a message. But with only about 35 people taking up their offer of free vaccines today and thousands still unvaccinated, their work is far from over. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, Rockland County, New York.
A turbulent day on Capitol Hill as top aviation officials face scrutiny following that crash of a 737 MAX 8 in Ethiopia. How the plane may soon again be cleared for takeoff, next. Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I just saw them doing the garden work and working with the little dogs. And she was very nice, talking to the kids.
Homicide investigators have now identified the 3 victims of a deadly and mysterious single-vehicle crash in Surrey as a mother and 2 sons. Along with the crash site, police have been focusing on this house. Property records show the home is owned by Anna Chow. CBC News has also learned her 2 sons were in the car, 22-year-old Davy Howe and Mike Howe.
Westbound to Joyce and downtown on this side, please.
It was a death at the Joyce-Collingwood SkyTrain station that closed it to trains and passengers for 3 hours. It caused big delays for morning commuters. The coroner is investigating, but police say there was no foul play.
No serious climate scientist thinks that this is just a random thing.
Prevention and common sense being urged ahead of what's expected to be another busy wildfire season in BC. Air quality experts already predicting outdoor summer events will be canceled due to wildfire smoke. Officials from across the aviation world gathered at Boeing's facility just outside Seattle today. The corporation unveiling a software fix to its grounded Boeing 737 MAX airliners. Boeing says it has reprogrammed its anti-stall software. That software believed to be the cause of 2 deadly crashes. A final version will be submitted to the FAA by the end of the week. After that, airlines will install the new software, and pilots will be trained before the changes can be certified. And in Washington, D.C., some tough questions for Boeing and federal aviation officials. Pilot representatives from WestJet were also there. They, like Boeing's many other customers, anxious to see where all of this goes. Ellen Morrow with the story.
After the most recent crash involving a Boeing plane they certified, it was almost inevitable that FAA officials would be grilled on Capitol Hill.
These crashes and subsequent reports on how the 737 MAX was approved have badly shaken consumer confidence.
Today, the acting head of the agency was criticized for handing over some of the safety certification to Boeing itself.
The FAA decided to do safety on the cheap, which is neither cheap nor safe.
Boeing was also allowed to sell safety features separately, features not included on the doomed Ethiopian Airlines flight or another 737 MAX that crashed off the coast of Indonesia in October.
You think the FAA has the responsibility to tell these airlines that they cannot shortchange safety for profits? Yes or no?
That is our fundamental responsibility.
The FAA also defended its initial decision not to include information about new software known as MCAS in the pilot's manual, software reportedly linked to both crashes.
It isn't just the MCAS. There's quite a few more factors in any investigation that we have to determine.
Earlier in the day, the transportation secretary faced questions about whether the FAA and Boeing are simply too close.
These questions, when they arise, if they arise, are troubling because we should have absolute confidence in the regulators that they are certifying properly.
Meanwhile, Boeing tried to restore confidence by announcing a software fix and making a previously optional warning system mandatory.
We're going to do everything that we can do to ensure that accidents like these never happen again.
Those changes, however, still have to be approved by the FAA. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Washington.
Here's a live look at Lower Lonsdale, the North Shore Mountains, from our tower cam here at 6:37 on this Wednesday evening. Gorgeous day, gorgeous evening here on the South Coast. Will it continue? Nick's forecast is next. Well, the second annual Sikh Heritage Month is now underway. It's an opportunity to share, promote, and celebrate the arts, heritage, and culture of BC's Sikh community.
It's a time for us to raise awareness about who are Sikhs and what are their contributions and what are their successes, so that as neighbors we get to know each other, that we can demystify perhaps the idea of what a Sikh is.
Today's celebration was held at East India Carpets, a business that was started by Job and Nirmal Sidhu. Job was one of the first South Asian Canadians to serve in World War II. Went on to support a number of community ventures. Full list of events that runs right through April can be found on the group's website, SikhHeritageMonthBC.ca. Nick is back now with a full forecast, and we are all hoping that this gorgeous weather continues. Nick?
Yeah, and you know what, Mike, say for just a little bit of rain shower activity tomorrow morning, we're back into the stretch of the sunshine heading into the weekend, and some good news in the long-range forecast. I'll show you that in just a sec here. I want to put it in perspective for you first, though. The average daytime high for this time of year, 11 degrees. Now, today we hit 12 degrees. It wasn't quite that record that I was hoping for a couple days ago, but nonetheless, still above seasonal, and we're expecting to see temperatures stay above seasonal over the next few days, in fact, even into the long-range forecast. Some cloud cover pushing in from the south right now. As I mentioned off the top of the show there, we've got some rain showers that are just moving in. Fairly sort of stagnant system. It's not moving very quickly, but I think we're going to see some of these rain showers just sort of poke into the Vancouver area for tomorrow. Most of the rain, though, likely out toward about Tofino down to Vancouver, or sorry, rather Victoria. And this is just going to be shower activity, not persistent rainfall. But I think especially through the morning hours, there's a chance that we could see some rain showers in Metro Vancouver as well. By the afternoon, though, sunshine returns, light winds, and we've got clear skies heading into tomorrow night and all the way through Friday as well. So lots of sunshine in the long-range forecast. As I mentioned as well, light winds. Now today, the winds down the street were a little bit stronger, about 30 kilometers per hour. But by tomorrow, winds peaking only about 10 kilometers per hour right across the board there. So very light winds in the forecast as well under the influence of high pressure. Now we haven't seen a lot in the way of precipitation, and that means we still have these road dust advisories in effect in the north, down around North Okanagan, dust advisories as well. So this is a special air quality advisory from Environment Canada. There's a look at the forecast across the province there. Temperatures ranging anywhere from about 10 to 16 degrees. The interior seeing a bit more in the way of rain showers. Cranbrook could actually see a bit of a wet snow mix through the early morning hours as temperatures are on the cooler side. There's a look as we head down toward the lower mainland there, in temperatures upwards to about 17 degrees in some areas with a few scattered showers. Now, the long-range forecast has clearing sky cover tomorrow, 14 degrees, 14 and 15 degrees heading through Saturday as well. And it's not until Monday where we see some rain showers as another system pushes in. Now, yesterday, Mike, you had asked me to do something about the rain on Sunday. There you have it. Okay, I put in a good word. And I think we've got a good weekend in store.
Good stuff.
Just for you.
Pushed it off to Monday. Appreciate it.
That's right.
Thanks, Nick.
You bet.
Well, with no Brexit deal in sight, UK Prime Minister Theresa May made a Hail Mary of sorts today. Why her unexpected offer might get the deal done after the break.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Attention all junior treasure hunters and adult assistants. Unravel the clues and win a limited edition CBC Vancouver lunchbox filled with secret items every day this week. Get the details at cbc.ca/treasure hunt. And join CBC Vancouver's Gloria Makarenko at the Innovators Lunch. Get inspired and network with local business and community leaders, all for a good cause. For more, check us out, cbc.ca/BC.
Britain's impending exit from the European Union has been anything but the clean break the country was promised. And today, the complex proceedings led British Prime Minister Theresa May to promise her resignation in exchange for an approved deal. But as Thomas Degla tells us, it's not quite so simple.
Embattled and blamed for bungling Brexit, Theresa May finally faced the question today: when will she leave 10 Downing Street for good? Twice failing to get her divorce deal approved, almost nothing has gone her way. So the opposition framed her choice like this:
either listen and change course or go. Which is it to be?
Yep.
The Prime Minister's been here before, with her back against the wall and pitching her deal as the only way to keep Brexit alive.
Other options would lead to delay, to uncertainty, and risk never delivering Brexit.
Except this time, behind closed doors, she made the ultimate offer, telling her Conservative MPs she'll quit once Brexit is delivered, likely by summer. May left the meeting hoping she had finally convinced enough Tories to back her deal. Already, some hardline Brexiters like Jacob Rees-Mogg are warming to it.
And Mrs May's deal is better than not leaving at all.
In another sign of May's weakness, Parliament seized control of the whole Brexit debate.
It's been nearly 3 years since Britain voted to leave the EU, and yet this is the first time that MPs here are given a real say as to what form of Brexit this country wants.
MPs were handed ballots with 8 outcomes, from no deal to a second referendum, asked to vote yes or no to each.
It illustrates, I have to say, a failure of a governmental system that we have ended up coming to such important debates at such an 11th hour and 59th minute.
Order! Faced with such a critical choice, MPs failed to agree on anything.
I confess I'm not utterly astonished that after one day's debate, no agreement has been reached.
The only option that came close to gaining majority support was to leave the EU but maintain a customs union. It's a move toward a soft Brexit, but still not a final answer.
CBC's Thomas Degla reporting from London. Well, there is more bad news after that deadly cyclone in Mozambique. Cholera has now been confirmed in the disaster zone. As the CBC's Nala Ayad reports, the country's health director is warning the disease will spread.
It's been extraordinary watching as the aid operation here at the Bathe airport has grown by the day. There are people here from all around the world, and soon there will be more Canadians here on the ground as well. But even with all of this, aid organizations are saying that it's still not enough to deal with the urgent needs in this country. Yesterday we were speaking actually to the head of the WFP, the World Food Program, David Beasley, who said that even 2 weeks after the cyclone hit, they only have about 10% of the funding they need to deal with immediate needs. And that is, the biggest concerns are just getting food to people, to hundreds of thousands of people who are in need of food, but also water. Now, another major concern for authorities here is the matter of health and the possibility of the outbreak of disease. And in particular, they are worried about malaria and cholera. In fact, today, the authorities here, the local ones, confirmed that there have been 5 cases of cholera so far, but they're also dealing with about 2,700 cases of people who are showing symptoms that could well be those of cholera. Also, so the World Health Organization is providing a treatment unit. It will also provide some vaccinations, hundreds of thousands of vaccinations, but they are still concerned. Adding to their concern is the fact that The Bathe Hospital and several health centers in this city were damaged in the cyclone, so that is an added issue as well. And given all of that, the Canadian Red Cross has deployed a field hospital to actually augment those kinds of services here. 25 Canadians will be on the ground to lend a hand, doctors, nurses, and technicians who could treat up to 30,000 people here to try to avert the worst case scenario. Nalayed, CBC News, Bathe Airport, Mozambique.
Most advertisers are well aware that diversity sells, but for employees over 40, discrimination has become a problem. And as Diane Buckner explains, a growing number of professionals are struggling with how to deal with it.
So their goal was to take on the German brands.
Eric McPherson has been in advertising for 14 years. Nowadays, though, he works part-time from home. He lost his job at an agency last November.
I'm not new to changes of careers. Everything.
But at just 44 years old, it seems he's too old to get a new full-time position in the industry.
Most agencies I'm finding is like 35 is kind of the max that you're seeing people, unless they're at the executive level.
Statistics show the majority of employees at advertising, marketing, and public relations agencies, close to 40%, are between the ages of 20 and 30. Only 10% are over 50. Compare that to the Canadian labour force as a whole, where that over 50 group represents 33% of workers.
On occasions, we lose that wonderful wisdom that comes with years of experience in changing marketplaces.
The head of the industry's professional association says often clients are convinced as well that only young people have fresh ideas.
When you get into a conversation about social or digital, the expectation is that if somebody isn't a millennial, they're not a native and haven't got a clue what they're talking about.
What are you going to say about how you ended up at this stage of your life?
The industry is aware of the problem. This is a support group for people whose careers have come to an abrupt end.
Ageism today is rampant.
There's a waiting list to get in to learn job search tips and how to talk about why you're unemployed.
It's anxiety-provoking because you think this work that I knew throughout my career no longer exists for me.
I think that's not the best way to start.
Kara Kay is still employed. She's just 39 years old, but she's already planning ahead.
I'm going to be working for another 25, 30 years. And the industry I was in, I'm currently in, I don't see that happening. People get phased out.
You see when you go into service sectors like law and consultancy, actually the grey hairs mean more value.
Eric McPherson believes part of the problem is money, the higher salaries older, more experienced people expect.
I think honestly at the end of the day, it's about cost efficiencies for the agencies. I'm actually looking to move away from advertising. I haven't quite figured out exactly what that is.
A brand new career could be the best idea. Diane Buckner, CBC News, Hamilton, Ontario.
Type 1 diabetes affects about 300,000 Canadians. It's a chronic disease that's usually diagnosed at an early age. Thanks to new insulins and technologies, most type 1 diabetics live long lives. But the costs can be staggering. Vicadopia reports.
It's one of the gadgets that keeps Courtney McLaren out of danger. A small pod under her shirt delivers the right amount of insulin, which her body doesn't produce on its own.
You're coming down.
For type 1 diabetics like Courtney, regularly monitoring blood sugars ensures she doesn't get too much or too little insulin, which could have fatal consequences. But insulin, insulin delivery devices, glucose monitors, test strips, and all the connected supplies add up each month.
It was shocking when I added it up this morning, kind of sickening because, you know, between 800, let's say 860 as a conservative figure, that's a mortgage payment in New Glasgow, or that's a couple car payments.
Provincial insurance coverage has its limits, and it's often different for each province. Same with private insurance. Insulin pumps alone can cost as much as $9,000, leaving some people to ration or raise money.
There's something very, very wrong when you actually have to go out and fundraise for one of these amazing devices to manage blood sugar, thus not being such a drain on the healthcare system.
Those were the days.
When Paul Levine was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, most people didn't live past their 60s. Levine is 72, healthy, and a mentor to newly diagnosed young people.
A lot of them, don't have
jobs where there is insurance coverage, and they see it as a real burden.
Add to that the worry about rising prices. In the last 4 years in the U.S., the cost of insulin has doubled. And even with the promise of pharmacare, diabetic devices and supplies still won't be covered.
To leave people to private markets and healthcare is a difficult thing to do because they really have no control and no ability to control the prices.
For now, Tammy McLaren says her family is managing the cost of Courtney's diabetes, but unless the system changes, her daughter will one day have to manage on her own. Vic Adopia, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, a piece of TV history has been discovered in Tumbler Ridge. How it got there and why it's got some singing a song of ice and fire. Next. Leanne Young is here, filling in for Dan Burrett. What have you got coming up tonight at 11?
Well, we'll have more on that fatal crash in Coquitlam that killed a teenager. I was out there yesterday and we saw the start of a memorial. It's now grown considerably. Lots of people sharing memories about the 13-year-old girl, so we'll have more on that coming up tonight at 11 o'clock.
All right, we'll look forward to that. A Tumbler Ridge couple says it wasn't really fans of the HBO hit Game of Thrones, but it was Kevin and Birgit Sharman who stumbled their way into winning a global contest to promote the show.
And that is one of 6 thrones HBO stashed around the globe. The Sharmans got tipped off by a reporter after social media clues pointed to the Tumbler Ridge area.
Yeah, the couple picked up the search and found the throne near Babcock Creek. In the end, Birgit got the honor of the royal seat. Other thrones were found as far away as Brazil, Spain, and Sweden. Very clever of HBO there.
Yeah, I actually saw her photo on their Instagram page. It's
very
fun.
good.
Yeah.
Is the show starting up again
It is.
in a couple of
One
weeks?
more season.
Can't wait.
Yeah, Daenerys Stormborn, the unburnt, Mother Change, Khaleesi. Yeah, it's great.
Not that you follow it that
No,
closely.
no,
Yeah.
don't care about that show.
All right. Leanne's here right after the National at 11. Have a great night.
Good night.